The crowds are the main issue. We always show you something that's popular on social media at this point in the show. What about this? You were unable to approach. 9,000 views and 171,000 views. These were the YouTube numbers for two news conferences held prior to the Australian Open in 2026. A 20-year-old Filipina who would lose in the first round had the larger number. The global number one had the lower figure. Alex Eala is her name, and when you're done, after watching this video, you will see why the number 29 seed entered Wimbledon this week carrying a nation, while the world number one entered to protect her own reputation. This channel is designed for you if you have been in this corner since the Miami semifinal, the Junior US Open, or even before the seeding committee could spell her name. Join the Filipino army that has been correct about this story from the beginning by subscribing. The Mallorca narrative is already familiar to you. The ranks are already known to you. So put all of that aside for a bit. Eala won her maiden grass court prize in Birmingham 5 days prior to the start of Wimbledon. 2 weeks before that, she beat world Elena Rybakina, ranked number 2, ran all the way to the semifinals in Berlin. Alexandra Eala gave an absolutely amazing performance. She practiced for 2 hours on the Irangi grass on Saturday, June 27th, and entered Wimbledon as the first Filipino seeded at a Grand Slam. Now press that up to the bracket's opposite side. Aryna Sabalenka spent her week responding to inquiries about herself, whereas Eala spent hers responding to inquiries about her people. The Guardian published an interview with the world number one on June 27th with the term "bitch" in the headline. 3 days prior, Sabalenka was cited by Reuters as acknowledging that she had fallen into what she described as a deep, dark hole following her Roland Garros semi-final defeat. In her own words, she told reporters, "I just want to give up tennis for the time being, but we'll see. In a few days, we'll find out. I'm hoping to get back on course. Right now, all I want to do is stop playing tennis." Her pre-Wimbledon news conference was portrayed as a grilling by British media. Sabalenka hasn't mentioned Alex Eala or the Filipino supporters in public at all. And in this tale, the building's loudest sound is that silence. Because the number 29 seed was asked what Tagalog word she wanted to put on the trophy, while the world number one was asked to defend her personality. Let's start with the figure that was recorded by the BBC in January. Eala's Australian Open press conference, 171,000 views on YouTube, Carlos Alcaraz, 29,000, Coco Gauff, 29,000, Aryna Sabalenka, 9,000. The world number one was not the most watched WTA player in the world during the season's first slam. It was an unseeded Filipina who had not yet triumphed in a Melbourne match. The lines then appeared. Thousands of Filipinos formed a queue that stretched several hundred yards through the grounds outside Court 6, a 1,500-seat outer court, according to the BBC's tennis reporter in Melbourne. It was stated aloud by and Kyothevong on BBC Radio 5 Live. The lines were unbelievable. Who is in charge of scheduling? An institutional white flag was the official response from the Australian Open regarding X. They stated they would use it as a lesson. A Grand Slam competition recently issued a public apology for misjudging the drawing ability of a 20-year-old. The word reached the All England Club by March. Eala was the first Filipino to be seeded in a major in the 147-year history of Grand Slam tennis when she arrived at Wimbledon 2026 as the number 29 seed. This is not a milestone for me personally. The most established organization in the sport has made this fundamental change. Then came the Lexus Birmingham Open Final in Birmingham on June 22, 2026. Eala wins Nikola Bartunkova 5-7, 6-3, 7-5 to win her first WTA grass court title. For the prize ceremony, she makes her way to the microphone. She does not appreciate her academy first. She doesn't start by thanking her coach. Maraming salamat mga kababayan sa suporta, she adds in Tagalog as she turns to face the audience. The people, not the location, are what make a place home. I appreciate your support, my fellow citizens. The people, not the location, are what make a place home. The entire Filipino army has been waiting for someone of this caliber to speak that into a championship microphone. At that point, a fan base became a player's story about themselves rather than a story about a player. You weren't early, but you were right if you've been telling your pals for the past 2 years that this one was unique, that it wasn't hype, that it was history, and that Birmingham was the receipt. 2. She had previously dispelled any remaining uncertainty over the tennis itself a few weeks prior in Berlin. In the round of 16, she defeated world number 2 Aryna Sabalenka. In the quarter-final, she defeated Alina Svitolina. Linda Noskova defeated her 6-2, 6-4 in 69 minutes to win the semi-final. Potential was no longer being chanted by the spectators. They were supporting a competitor who had just eliminated one of the top 2 players from a competition. The world number 1 was collapsing on the record on the opposite side of the globe. The Guardian essay, The Deep, Black Hole, the Roland Garros phrase, 2 players approaching the same fortnight, one carrying a nation, the other defending her reputation. You don't consult a fan when you want to know if something has changed in this sport. You ask and Kia Thaving, the captain of the Great Britain Billie Jean King Cup team, a former British number 1, and a long-time BBC tennis analyst who has observed 2 decades of Grand Slam crowds. Ko Thavong did not use diplomatic language as she observed the events outside Melbourne's Court 6. She gestured to the scheduling team and grasped for disbelief. That is not a light-hearted comment from a former national number 1 on national radio during a Grand Slam. That is an institutional person openly stating that Alex Eala is not alone and that the tour has not yet developed to accommodate the audience she brings with her. Greg Rosetsky, a former world number 4, Wimbledon fixture, and US Open finalist, suggested that this 2-week period would be Ayala's breakthrough slam, citing Filipino support as one of the reasons. The conclusion ceases to be an opinion when 2 former top 10 era voices examine the same 20-year-old and reach the same result. Perhaps the Wimbledon draw room the greatest favor of Alex Eala's career. Sabalenka is in the first quarter. Eala is in the same section as returning Serena Williams and Iga Swiatek in quarter 3. Before the final, the 2 women are unable to meet. Eala may face Serena Williams in round 2 if she defeats Renata Zarazua in her first encounter. The runway is located here. On the court, Sabalenka is not losing. Until they both make it to the last Saturday, she is being outdrawn in the grounds, outstreamed on YouTube, and rescued in the scheduling office by a player she won't see online. Zoom out even more. Throughout the modern period, tennis has been centered around Europe and the Anglo-American axis. There are 117 million people living in the Philippines. The British government estimates that there are hundreds of thousands of people living in the UK alone who are part of the diaspora. Many of them work in the NHS, which has made Wimbledon a top priority ever since the draw was cancelled. It's not a niche. The WTA has never had to serve that market before. See what transpires next. Wimbledon Round 1 against Zarazua, a potential Round 2 matchup with Serena Williams, the US Open Series, and the 2027 Australian Open, where you can be sure Melbourne Park won't put her on Court 6 once more. Eala has never claimed that any of this is a fairy tale. She won the first set 6-0 but fell to Alicia Parks at the Australian Open first round in January in front of the same Melbourne crowds. At Roland Garros, she lost early. Just last week, she suffered an early defeat at Bad Homburg. When ABS-CBN questioned her about the Bad Homburg exit on June 26, she did not attribute it to the attention, the timetable, or the surface. I think the conditions were difficult for me today, so I did the best I could with, what I had, she remarked. 5 days later, she was lifting the 9,171,000 Birmingham trophy, a logjam outside Court 6, a trophy speech in Tagalog, the removal of a top 2 player in Berlin, the first-seeded Filipino in Grand Slam history, a world number 1 entering Wimbledon defending the word bitch in a national newspaper, and a number 29 seed entering it defending nothing at all, just carrying a country. The world's greatest female tennis player is Aryna Sabalenka. The loudest is Alex Eala. Loudest is the variable that no one on the tour has worked out how to address at this Wimbledon, on a draw sheet that keeps them on opposing halves until the last Saturday. This is the question that merits discussion in the comments. Does Alex Eala attend SW19 during the second week? And if she does, in the end, who becomes the greater story? Weekend arrives, the world number 1 defending her ranking or the number 29 seed with a country marching behind her. This channel is designed for you if you have been in this situation since the Miami semifinal, the Junior US Open, or even before the seeding committee learned how to spell her name. Throughout Wimbledon and the US Open swing, we are the place where those who first witnessed it conversed with one another play by match. Join the rest of the Filipino army, who have been correct about this tale from the beginning, by subscribing. Crowds are the main issue. We always show you something that's popular on social media at this point in the show. What about this? You were unable to approach. 9,000 views and 171,000 views. These were the YouTube numbers for two news conferences held prior to the Australian Open in 2026. A 20-year-old Filipina who would lose in the first round had the larger number. The global number one had the lower figure. Alex Eala is her name, and when you're done, after watching this video, you will see why the number 29 seed entered Wimbledon this week carrying a nation, while the world number one entered to protect her own reputation. This channel is designed for you if you have been in this corner since the Miami semifinal, the Junior US Open, or even before the seeding committee could spell her name. Join the Filipino army that has been correct about this story from the beginning by subscribing. The Mallorca narrative is already familiar to you. The ranks are already known to you. So put all of that aside for a bit. Eala won her maiden grass court prize in Birmingham 5 days prior to the start of Wimbledon. 2 weeks before that, she beat world Aryna Sabalenka, ranked number 2, ran all the way to the